So someone finally taught Erika Kirk how to cry on cue. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. Today we are again talking about the widow Kirk. I believe this is my 4th video on Erika Kirk. She's just the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to talking about topics like intuition, discernment, and media manipulation and things like that, because everything about her is suspicious. Before I get into this video, my usual disclaimers. First of all, I don't know anybody in this video. I don't know anybody personally. I'm simply analyzing the behaviors of celebrities and public figures. And honestly, the stuff I'm talking about isn't even really about the celebrity or the public figure. It's about the lessons we can learn from, their images and what we see in the public so that we can take those lessons into our own lives so we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. I also want to make a note because every time the subject of Erika Kirk comes up, you get people that are screaming, you can't judge a grieving widow, or you can't judge how somebody grieves. And that is true. And I'm not judging how Erika Kirk is grieving. What she does in her private life and how she grieves privately and what she's going through internally, not my business. It's nobody's business. It's just her business. I am analyzing how she is acting publicly and what she is sharing with the public, which is what she's choosing to put out there. And when you choose to put something out there, you are opening yourself up to scrutiny. So what she's like in her private life and how she grieves privately, not my business, not your business, not anybody's business but hers. But what she shares publicly and what she's choosing to put out publicly, it's up for scrutiny in the same way that it is for everybody. And I find it ironic because I'm seeing more people, like people that are kind of like in her team and in her camp or on her side, so to speak. And I'm not just talking politically, because I do think that there's a political divide going on with people on the right and things like that. But the sort of the camp that is her supporters are kind of like, oh my God, I've never seen anybody hated this much on the internet. And, she's getting so much hate and it's, it just doesn't make sense. It's a grieving widow, whatever. Like, yeah, she's getting a lot of criticism, but let's be real. There's so many people online that show up on the internet just either as themselves or express their opinion, and they get so much more hate than Erika Kirk is ever gonna get. And frankly, I know people are like, people with money still have feelings. That's true, but I can tell you right now, as somebody who's been criticized for content that has been monetized and criticized for content that's not monetized, when you're getting paid and making a lot of money, it does ease the criticism. It does. And that's just like, I mean, I'm talking a few bucks here. She's making millions. She's on the path to billionaire. So the criticism she's getting, it comes with the territory. You want to be the star of the show, you open yourself up to criticism. That's the deal. And I don't even think Erika's getting a fraction of the criticism that like a lot of other people are getting online. So, this idea that people are like, why is Erika getting so criticized? She's bringing it on herself. So I've talked a lot about Erika Kirk in several other videos. I will link to this one, but she has been doing a lot of press promoting Charlie Kirk's last book that he wrote. So she's been doing a lot of interviews. I haven't watched all of them because there've been a lot of them, but she did do a town hall style interview with CBS. And I watched that, and I've also seen some clips from a few other interviews that she's done promoting Charlie Kirk's book. So I wanted to touch on a few things that have come up in these more recent interviews. So if there's anything that I missed in this, it's probably something that I've mentioned in a previous video because it's something she's probably done before. One thing that I think needs to be said, and I've seen some other people allude to this, but I don't think enough people are talking about this, is Erika Kirk is a terrible speaker. She is. And I mean, some people are good speakers, some people aren't, is what it is. She is a terrible speaker. She gives terrible interviews. She's a bad choice to be the face of a company. I have heard some people talk about the fact that Erika Kirk becoming CEO of Turning Point made sense because she's the widow and it's not unusual for a widow to take over her husband's company, especially if it's his legacy, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not common actually for the widow of a CEO to take over the company. But I actually don't even think it's strange, and I've talked about this in a few other videos, I don't even think it's strange that she would have a stake in the company. I imagine that would be something that, I would think that Charlie Kirk would have it arranged because I'm assuming he's somebody that would be organized enough to have a will and, have things laid out in case something happened to him. They were claiming he was getting death threats. So, I'm assuming that he probably had things planned out. And it would make sense for her to have a stake in the company so that, money that the company made that, Charlie Kirk had built, if there's income, some of it would go back to her, to his family, to his kids, to, his, the next generations. That's generational wealth right there. I mean, that makes sense. So Erika Kirk being involved in Turning Point when her husband passed, I don't think it's unusual. I don't think that's weird. I don't even think it's suspicious. Her being the CEO and like the face of the company is a deliberate choice. And it's a bad choice for a lot of reasons. For one, because a big part of the whole platform was that women should be home taking care of children, especially when the children are young, and her children are young. So it's the antithesis, and she's danced around all the arguments, and I'll get into those later, as to how she justifies it. But at the end of the day, it's the truth. Her running the company is the antithesis of what one of the values the company stood for. But also, she's supposed to be a grieving widow right now. And the fact that she's now showed up as this CEO, I'm, you know, girl boss woman. Again, the antithesis of what the message was of the company, but also this isn't how a grieving widow acts. And I understand that there's people that have argued, well, some people just, they grieve by throwing themselves into their work. Valid. If she wanted to work behind the scenes, but her being the face of this company is a deliberate choice that she's making, and she's not a good representative for the company. I'm taking the contents of the company out of it for a second because, again, like I'm not really a Turning Point fan particularly. I'm looking at this more from like a business marketing kind of like a professional standpoint. She's not a good spokesperson for this company. I mean, I'm not saying that women can't be good CEOs or spokespeople for certain companies. I think they can be. In this case, she's not a good fit. Not just because she's a woman, but she's also not a good speaker. They need someone to come in that actually is going to be more of a representative of Charlie Kirk, his style, his vibe. I've seen some people say that there's an argument that Turning Point really doesn't work without Charlie Kirk. That could be valid because they made him the face of the company. And, you know, they made him, like the company was him. I know, I get the impression a lot of donors probably didn't think it that way. They probably thought he was just the figurehead, which is probably true, and they could put anybody else in and it would work. But Erika Kirk is just not working. And like, I really do think that if Turning Point wants to keep going and they want to keep doing what they're doing and they want to keep their following and they want to keep their power and influence, Erika Kirk's not the way to go. It shocks me that like, this is a company with so much money and all these donors and everything, and it's just like, are there no PR people? Like, there's got to be some kind of a PR team or something. I have heard some people say that maybe she's just a terrible puppet. Like, there's people pulling the puppet strings and she's doing a bad job being a puppet. That's valid. But you would think that at some point the powers that be or the PR or whoever would have to step in and be like, this just isn't working. Like, she's a terrible representative for this company because of her actions. And like, even if everything she does and says is totally on the up and up and none of these conspiracy theories are true, and I'm gonna get into some of those, but even if that's the case, she looks suspicious. She acts suspicious. People don't trust her. Even people that were Charlie Kirk fans, even people that were Charlie Kirk supporters don't trust her. The majority of the people don't trust her, so it's not going to work if that's what you're trying to do. So I think they're either going to need to replace her, or I think the company's going to be in trouble, or maybe they're just going to keep doubling down and keep forcing her down our throats, and then do a thing that they've done with like Blake Lively and Taylor Swift and turn around and be like, oh, you just fell for the smear campaign. Which at the end of the day, yes, I'm sure smear campaigns happen. And I do think that people can be very easily swayed. But at the end of the day, a lot of these smear campaigns, like if you look at like the Blake Lively thing that people are accusing everybody of like a smear campaign, it's like all they did was push content that Blake Lively did, like interviews she's done or things like that made her look bad. And yeah, when you're bombarded with that stuff, you do start to make a judgment about her, but they're all her words. It's not like these are AI stories. It's not like these are AI videos. These are all actual videos of interviews that she's done where she's been rude, or times that she's been rude or inappropriate or things like that, or that's been suspect. So like, yeah, you could argue that a smear campaign can kind of spin a narrative or get a certain story about somebody or a certain narrative about somebody to the forefront. But I mean, unless you're creating AI images or, you know, AI video, or unless you're actually like blatantly lying about this person, the smear campaign is just bringing something to light as opposed to creating a narrative. I think both can happen, but I just want people to be aware, because there's a lot of people throwing out like, oh, you just judged this person because of the intentional smear campaign. And in some cases, I do think that happens. But at the end of the day, sometimes these like smear campaigns are really just bringing to the surface something about someone that was going unnoticed. So that's where I think we all have to use our discernment, which is a big word people are using nowadays. I prefer intuition, but you know, you have to really tune into these things, because not everything you're seeing is true, but not everything you're seeing is false either. And that's where we have to be really careful of not being kind of like an in a black and white, like all in, all out mentality with the stuff. One of the things that Erika Kirk mentioned in the town hall style CBS interview was that she writes all her own speeches. And I'm thinking, maybe you shouldn't. Like, maybe you shouldn't. Like, it shows that you do, and maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should have someone write something for you, because you're not doing a very good job of it. And that was kind of an interesting kind of like, I don't know if she was trying to brag or what, but I'm just like, oof, maybe you do need someone to write your speeches for you. But it's interesting how she says she writes her own speeches, but then she always talks about the Holy Spirit coming through her. And I'm like, so didn't God write your speech? But based on her belief system. So she didn't really write her own speech, did she? She had the Holy Spirit come through her and write her speech. Interesting that she'll give the Holy Spirit credit sometimes, but not other times. Again, like I've said in other videos, I'm not somebody who practices organized religion. I'm kind of a non-practicing Catholic. It's how I was raised, but I'm not really practicing. I don't really follow an organized religion right now. I'm more spiritual than I am religious. I don't judge anybody for their religious beliefs, you know, provided their religious beliefs are not harming other people. I believe in freedom of religion. You can believe what you want to believe. I've had a lot of people argue with me about this, but I'm a big separation of church and state person. So, you know, you can have your religion and you can have your politics. I think when you start meshing the two together, and I understand that there's going to be overlap in that. I understand that, but I don't know. I'm very leery of the direction that this is going, and I think I've been blind to a lot of it when people started throwing around terms like Christian nationalists and things like that. I was kind of just like, okay, it's just another term. I didn't really know that much about it until all of this turning point stuff was happening, and I was just like, oh wow, these are people that are really like, they're totally clouding religion and politics, and I think that's a scary direction to go in. One of the weirdest things about Erika Kirk is that in certain instances, she will give way too much detail about things that we don't need to know about. They're not important. They're not details that ever lead to an important point. They're never details that go anywhere. They're random details, and some of them are just really personal details that are like, that's not really our business. You know, like the idea that the night before Charlie left for Utah to, you know, go to the event where he was, you know, tragically shot and killed, you know, the idea that he slept in the daughter's bed and then he went to the bathroom in the morning and got his wedding ring and then left because the daughter wanted to sleep in bed with them, and all these details or whatever. And then she talked about, in the CBS town hall interview, she gave this whole thing when they were asking her about the first speech she gave after Charlie was killed, and this whole thing about how she came back home and she slept in the daughter's bed because she couldn't even go into her own bedroom for months, which is weird because he's only been dead for 3 months. You know, this whole thing, and then all those are details that we didn't need to know. Like that's her personal grieving. Like that's her business. All that stuff is not our business. But then when someone asks her a question like, well, where's your husband's gravesite? Where's your husband buried? And it's like, can't I have anything? Like, am I not allowed privacy? Like, can't my kids pray in private? And it's like, she's weirdly private about things that would be normal to be public information, but then she's like oversharing on these weird random details that aren't really any of our business, and most people just don't really care about. Like, if she slept in her daughter's bed because it was too hard for her to sleep in the bed she shared with her husband, that's her business. That's her grieving process. That's her business. But the idea that where her husband's buried or going to be buried should be private, that's a weird thing. Like, because most people's burial sites are public. And when it comes to the topic about grave sites and the weird aspect of like that's supposed to be private information so her kids can pray in private or something like that, which, first of all, are we just gonna hide these kids in a bunker for now and forever? Like, are these kids never going to be allowed out in public? Like, are they just being locked away in the basement somewhere and they're never gonna get to see the light of day until they're adults, or even then? And I know people are like, it's for security purposes. You could argue that the Vance family is probably at a higher security risk, with J.D. Vance being the vice president of the United States, and we've seen the kids' faces. Like, we know that the kids exist. Like, they're not hidden from the world. They have security and they're not showing them constantly, but we know they exist. Like, we've seen them. So the idea that Erika and Charlie Kirk kept these kids so hidden, and like she's never seen in public with them, the fact that they're claiming that they have to keep his gravesite private so the kids can go to the gravesite privately, it's like, are these kids never going to be allowed to be seen in public? Like, are they never going to be allowed to go out in the world and actually socialize with other people? Like, it's like, I understand keeping your kids, like, you know, off social media or keeping your kids more private, but like, it's getting to the point where it's becoming like they're so hidden away. I'm starting to be concerned, one, if there actually are kids, but not just that, but like, are these kids okay? Like, I mean, how hidden are they going to be to the point where I understand why people are questioning if these kids even exist, because it's like the way they're being hidden away is so extreme that like there's other people that are at, you know, bigger threats, at bigger risk, and their children are, you know, again, not being paraded around all the time, but they're not being hidden away. And there's a fine line there where it's starting to get creepy at how much these children are being hidden. But also, when it comes to Charlie Kirk's gravesite and the idea that this would have to be so private, it's like a weird conflict, because Charlie Kirk's quote-unquote memorial service slash funeral, whatever, was a political rally. It was a huge political rally. They treated it as if this guy had been some kind of elected official or world leader or something. And I know people are arguing, well, we all knew he was going to be president of the United States. Maybe he would be, maybe he wouldn't be. The guy wasn't even a college graduate, so whatever. I think that's weird, but whatever, we don't know. But he wasn't. The reality that he wasn't. But you treated his like memorial, so to speak, as if he was this major world leader. You had to have this huge stadium rally with fireworks and everything because he was, you know, you're treating him like he was this hugely important historical figure. People comparing him to like JFK and Martin Luther King and all this kind of stuff, which I mean, I do think is crazy, but like, you know, all these comparisons. But yet when it comes to his burial, everybody's acting like it's private, it's privacy, the family should be private, everything should be private, nobody can know anything. Like now all of a sudden he's a private citizen that wants his privacy. It's like you can't have it both ways. Like either you're gonna treat this guy like he was some kind of iconic political figure, or he was just a regular guy. Like you don't get to pick and choose. And so that's why I think that this whole idea of like nobody knowing where the gravesite is or the memorial or anything like that, and that being kept so hush hush, and Erika kind of, you know, having the attitude of like, you know, can't we have this one thing? Can't we have this privacy? But then also she's like sharing details about like her and her husband not sharing a bed the last night that he was there, which again, not our business, you know, or you know, the fact that he left in the morning and got his wedding ring from the bathroom and then left and didn't say goodbye, so she didn't get to kiss him goodbye, and this and that. Not our business. But if you're gonna act as if this guy is this huge revolutionary political figure, which again is questionable, but if that's how you're gonna act and that's how you're gonna have a big memorial for him, but then all of a sudden when people are just like, well, where's his gravesite? Because again, there's people out there who are Charlie Kirk fans. I'm not particularly a fan of his, but if you are, your business. But like, there's people out there who, you know, if you made the effort to go to the rally or watch the rally or whatever, because it wasn't a memorial, it was a rally. I mean, it was like 5-6 hours long or something. You can imagine some of these people are going to want to visit the gravesite. They're going to want to pray. They're going to want to pay their respects. There's people that are going to want to do that, and the idea that that would be kept private, it's again, with Erika, it's weird the things that she's trying to share publicly and just like kind of share all these things that don't need to be public, that we don't need to know about our personal life or whatever, but then other things that are being kept private that would be normal to be public. I think that's where a lot of people are getting to be very distrustful of her, because at the end of the day, it's like you're oversharing stuff that we don't need to know, but then you're trying to keep things private that probably shouldn't be private. So Erika Kirk finally showed tears in the CBS town hall interview that she did. She didn't have her tissue, which I'm like, oh my God, thank God she didn't have her tissue, because that was getting so annoying. But she let the tears flow. But then it's interesting because then the interviewer handed her a tissue and she blotted it away, but then all of a sudden she's on camera and her makeup is perfect again. And look, I will say, as a former beauty blogger that used to test a lot of makeup, you can get some pretty good waterproof makeup, and she probably does. But she probably would need touch-ups. So my guess is there probably were some breaks in filming for her to have touch-ups of her makeup. And that's one of the things that I want to get into. Look, Erika Kirk clearly has extensions. Like, they're not even subtle that she has extensions in her hair. It's not her natural hair color. She's always got her nails done. I'm gonna take a big guess she's got some Botox and fillers going on there. I mean, I know she has a nose job, because if you look at her pageant photos, that's obvious, but that's like kind of a one and done kind of thing. All these interviews, she has her makeup. I'm sure she has her makeup done. Those things take a lot of time and a lot of money. We're talking about somebody who's supposed to be mourning the loss of her husband, who has 2 small children at home, allegedly, that she preaches about prioritizing. She's spending her time not just doing these interviews, but like all of that beauty maintenance takes up time that she's not spending with her kids. And also, it costs a lot of money. Now, some of these things, like her makeup artist, maybe even her hair people, like some of it she could probably fluff off as a business expense. But we're talking about somebody that there was actually a donation. It wasn't actually GoFundMe, but there was some kind of a donation thing that, I don't know, it was like up to 5 million. It's probably more or whatever. Like people were donating money to the family of Charlie Kirk. And it's like, was that going towards her hair extensions and her makeup artist? The fact that she's spending a lot of time and money on all of these beauty treatments, and then on top of it doing all these interviews when she's not home with her kids, and she's spending all this money when there's people out there who have been donating their hard-earned money to the family of Charlie Kirk, and people are arguing, well, she's gonna need security. Well, she could spend some of her hair extension money on security. I mean, she was left with millions. She was left as CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. She's headed to billionaire status. She's doing fundraisers that are like, what, like $10,000 a plate fundraisers where they're getting millions of dollars from this. It's like, okay, but we know where your money's going. It's like all these people are donating money to this person and she's spending it on beauty treatments that I don't care if she gets them, but like she's getting donations and making all this money off her husband's death. Erika even makes a comment in the CBS town hall interview. She references the fact that one of the biggest problems right now is that parents aren't raising their kids properly. They're just handing their kids a device and letting the devices raise their kids, so they don't know, you know, what their kids are looking up on the internet and things. And she actually says something like, I mean, they're just leaving their kids on a device and going off to Pilates or something, which you know is a reference towards moms, obviously, because it's moms that would be going to Pilates, not fathers. So she's obviously putting that pressure and that judgment on mothers, that mothers aren't home raising their kids enough. Yet she's spending all of her time as a CEO of a company, doing interviews constantly, traveling, doing interviews constantly, doing turning point events, doing big fundraisers. She's also spending her time getting her hair extensions and her hair color and her nails done and getting her makeup done for all these interviews and all these events and things like that. And is probably also doing Pilates or some kind of workout because she is quite skinny. Who's raising her kids? I'm guessing she's a nanny, but you know, most people can't afford nannies. So the idea that she's acting as if other people aren't raising their kids, they're just handing their kids a device because they're going off to Pilates, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Maybe your kids aren't getting a device, but you're not home raising your kids, clearly. Erika also mentioned in the interview that she doesn't have social media on her phone. She just takes it off her phone, but she has a team that handles her social media for her. That is one of the most privileged things that I've ever heard anybody say. And it's one of those things where I understand that she's promoting a book about the Sabbath, so taking a break, and one of the big thing that I got away from that, not having read the book, but is that Charlie took the Sabbath and he was off his phone the whole time. You know, look, I don't think taking a break from your phone for a little bit is a bad idea. I think most people need it. I think most people need to kind of set it aside sometimes. A lot of people that are on their phone too much, I get that, that's valid. But for the majority of people, I mean, there are some people who can survive without social media, but at the end of the day, if you are somebody who is doing anything that requires content creation or any kind of marketing or any kind of advertising or media or anything like that, if you're running a business or, you know, you have a podcast, or like the vast majority of the things in the world that people are doing as far as building and growing something, you need social media. And I understand that when people get to have enough money and they have a big enough business, you can hire a social media manager, but it is so privileged, and it's one of those things that drives me crazy about some of these like really big podcasters or the really big content creators or influencers or people that run really big businesses that are like, oh, I just don't even have social media on my phone. I just don't even look at it because it's just so negative and stuff. But they have a team of people that come to them and tell them like what's trending, so they know what to do with what's trending on social media. Or I mean, Taylor Swift was guilty of this too when she was talking about how she's not on social media, but yet so many songs on her last album were based on like trending social media topics and references and things like that. It's like, okay, so she has a team of people that go to her and tell her what's trending. Either that or she is actually on social media. It's like the idea that you have a team of people that bring to you the social media topics or come to you and tell you what's going on social media, or you know, bring the news to you, or you have a team of people that are creating online content for you for promotion, and they create the content, they create the captions, and you just get to sit back and maybe just, you know, film something or take some photos or something like that or whatever. That's an incredibly privileged position to be in, and that drives me crazy. as someone who runs her entire platform like all by herself, and I would love someday if I was making enough money so that I could, you know, hire people to help me. But I also, you know, yeah, social media can be really toxic. It can be really draining. It can be exhausting. But also, like, what I do is create content on social media. So like the idea that I want to be engaged with people online, I prefer to just be engaged with the positive, or even people that just want a healthy good faith debate. I would love to ignore all of the toxic people, but you know, you got to take the good with the bad. But the idea that, like, yes, I could take a day and not be on social media, and a lot of people could and probably should. But the idea that people can exist in the world, especially if you're running a business or something, or you're doing anything where social media content creation is essential to what you're doing, the idea that you can just not have social media on your phone and have like a team of people so like they get to deal with the toxic stuff. I mean, that's such a like let them eat cake kind of a thing. It's such a like a privileged thing to say. And the fact that so many people are just not in that position to just hand over their social media to somebody else to manage, I mean, to me, that rubs me the wrong way. Okay, Erika Kirk brought out one of my pet peeves in her CBS town hall style interview. She made a reference that one of Charlie's favorite words was the word earn, and that he loved people that worked hard to earn things. Coming from the woman who was handed the role of CEO of her husband's company. So she didn't have to earn anything. She was handed that position. And this is where, and I don't care if you say this is me not being a girl's girl, I don't care. But one of my biggest pet peeves in life, one of my biggest pet peeves are women that are handed an opportunity because of like who they're married to or who they're sleeping with, and then they act like they earned it, when it's like, no, you were handed this opportunity. You don't get to say you earned it. And the idea that she would sit there and say that, well, Charlie admired people that earned things, so he obviously didn't admire you. It's one of those things that gets under my skin. I do find it interesting because I don't even remember what this was in reference to, but I remember hearing, you know, before the Charlie Kirk situation, Megyn Kelly making a reference to that being one of her pet peeves, is like, you know, wives who are like handed a business or handed a charity or something from their husband, and then they act as if they're the ones that did it when it's like they were handed that opportunity. Again, and I'm not talking about women who like organically grew something themselves and they just happen to be married. I'm talking about women who literally only have what they have because they were given it to them because of who their husband is. And I remember Megyn Kelly talking about that being her pet peeve, and I remember thinking like, yes, absolutely, I'm on board with that. Yet Megyn Kelly is supporting Erika Kirk, who is literally in that situation right now. And that is just one of the things that gets under my skin, of these women that are like, they just marry somebody wealthy and somebody successful, and then all of a sudden they have this opportunity. I mean, it's not usually that the husband passes away and the wife takes over necessarily, but it could be as easy as, you know, why does Kylie Kelce have a podcast? Because of who she's married to, and not even just who she's married to, because of who her husband's brother is engaged to or whatever. It's stuff like that that drives me crazy. Or, you know, a lot of these women out there who they have the wealthy husband and they're making all this money, and then they decide to start a social media, and so then they get the social media push because everybody knows who their husband is, so now the wife gets famous on social media simply because people know who her husband is. That stuff just gets under my skin, because I came to social media from the entertainment industry, which was an industry of it's all in who you sleep with to get successful. And then you go into another space and it's like, oh, well, you have to already be married to somebody rich and famous in order to have the money and access and resources to do things. And it also kills me when some of these women who are, you know, just married to these wealthy people, and like they do a brand deal and people are all like, oh my God, girl, get that bag. And like, if somebody who's like a single woman does a brand deal, people are like, oh my God, she's just doing this as a cash grab. She just wants the money. It's like, yeah, because some of us didn't marry money and need the money in order to survive. Whereas some of these women, it's like, and again, I'm not shaming any woman who wants to work and have a husband or anything, but some of these circumstances where these women are literally being handed these opportunities because of who their husband is, and they're being handed the brand deals and they're being handed all this stuff, and it's just like, okay, wait a second, like, you're married to money, but like some of us actually need to work to earn the money. I know it's a pet peeve of mine, and I realize that I sound bitter, and people are probably gonna accuse me of being an anti-girls girl, but it's just when Erika Kirk was talking about, oh, Charlie respected people that earn things, saying that as a woman who was handed this multi-million dollar company who probably got millions from her husband's death. And she's headed to billionaire status, especially with all of the fundraisers she's doing and all the money donations and stuff. She's being handed this stuff, but she has the audacity to say that her husband respected people that earned things. That got under my skin. Okay, let's talk about the conspiracy theory topic. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. And look, I don't care who you voted for. I really don't, because this is a bipartisan statement. But I'm gonna say this. Donald Trump was elected by conspiracy theorists. I think he knows this. He played into it, because you can say a lot of things about Donald Trump, and people have said a lot of things about Donald Trump, but he knows his audience, and he knows how to market himself and branding, and he knows all that stuff. People want to say, oh, it was MAGA racists that elected. No, it was conspiracy theorists that got Donald Trump elected. I've had people, even in the comments of my videos that I've done about the Erika Kirk situation, and they're like, Charlie Kirk was the reason that Trump got elected. No, he was not. I'm not saying he wasn't a factor, but he was not who got Donald Trump elected. It was conspiracy theorists that got Trump elected. And he fed into that. Even, I mean, when Trump was on Rogan, he was kind of talking about releasing files on the alien stuff and the JFK conspiracies. And, you know, the Epstein thing we all know is like, you know, he was playing into that, and that's a whole other rabbit hole situation. The right, and not everybody on the right obviously, but the right has been so big on conspiracies. I mean, Trump knew that getting RFK Jr. on his side was going to feed into the people that were with the vaccine conspiracies and, you know, were questioning big pharma and the COVID conspiracies and things, and questioning Fauci and stuff. Like, Trump knew that he needed the conspiracy theorists on his side, and he managed his campaign that way. The right has been focused on question everything and don't trust anyone. I actually think that that was more of a left-leaning idea, and it has switched to a right-leaning idea, which is a whole rabbit hole thing in itself. But that's who got Trump elected. So it's interesting now how, now that with the Charlie Kirk situation, with his death, with Erika Kirk, now all of a sudden the people on the right are like, why are you questioning things? Why do you think this is a conspiracy? Maybe this is just what it is. I mean, it's been years now that people on the right have been like, question everything, don't believe everything, don't trust the government, don't trust everything the government's been telling you. But now with this situation, it's supposed to be, don't question it, it is what it seems, it's exactly what it looks like, and they're mad that anybody's questioning it. I mean, if you can't see the hypocrisy there, I just don't know what to tell you. And you know what? Maybe it is what it looks like. I don't know. But the fact that everybody is so shocked that the people that have been questioning the government, that have been questioning everything, that have been believing that everything might not be what it says it is, and I would argue Charlie probably, if this situation had happened to anybody else, Charlie Kirk would probably be questioning it. He would probably be jumping on the conspiracy theories, and he would probably be jumping on this stuff. So the fact that Erika Kirk would get so upset about, now that the conspiracy theories are happening to her and are happening around her husband, now she's upset about it. It's like, I'm sorry, that's what the party's based in. And look, I say this as somebody, I like a good conspiracy theory, and even of the ones that I mentioned, I think some of them aren't really conspiracies. I think some of them are probably truths. And I think I believe with most things is there's probably some extreme ideas about things, and the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that have turned out to be true. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that I believe are true. I don't really know what the truth is in the whole Charlie Kirk, you know, assassination and the deal with Erika Kirk. I don't know which ones are true and which ones aren't. But the idea that the party that is about conspiracy theories and is about questioning everything and is about, you know, never trusting the government and never believing that everything is just as simple as it seems, the idea that the people in that party would then be shocked that they were questioning the Charlie Kirk assassination, it's mind-boggling. I don't know how you can wrap your head around that. Look, I'm not a Candace Owens fan, particularly. I have other videos where I've talked about her before, and, you know, I am skeptical of her the way I'm skeptical of most people. I've agreed with some of the things she said. I've disagreed with some of the things she said. I'm not a huge fan of her style. I think she's very like rage bait, clickbaity. I think she uses a lot of manipulation with her content to like tease people into thinking that she's got the answers, and then she never really fully gives people the answers. But she has made her platform on conspiracy theories and questioning everything, which I respect. I do. That, you know, the idea of somebody speaking up and questioning things, I absolutely respect that. So the idea that people are like shocked that she's doing this with the Charlie Kirk situation, I'd be shocked if she didn't. I do find it interesting that it almost seems like Erika Kirk is the most upset with Candace because Candace is making money off of making content about Charlie Kirk when Erika Kirk is making a lot more money on the whole Charlie Kirk assassination. Like a lot, like she's headed to billionaire status. And she made a reference in one interview that she did about, I don't know if she said Candace by name, but she was referencing people making hundreds of thousands of dollars on content about her or about Charlie Kirk and this stuff, which I know she's not talking about me because I'm certainly not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wish I was, but I'm not. So I'm assuming she's talking about Candace because it was alluded to she was. But it does kind of seem like the main reason. She's not upset because of what's being said. She's not really upset about anything other than the fact that, well, how dare somebody else make money off of my husband's tragedy because that money's mine. Like, she wants all the money for herself. I mean, the fact that she's doing all these $10,000 a plate fundraisers and people are donating massive amounts of money to a widow who's been left as a millionaire and is headed to billionaire status because she was left with like $100 million company or something. I mean, Erika Kirk is raking it in. She is making so much money off of her husband's death. It's insane. And it does seem like just in the wording and the way everything's going that like she's almost more upset that Candace is making money off of this because like how dare Candace make some money because all that money is supposed to be Erika's. Like how dare Candace make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of videos about Charlie Kirk when Erika's making hundreds of millions of dollars off of the death of Charlie Kirk. It almost seems like that's where she's upset. And one of the things that I want people to know, because I see people online, some people are like, I'm with Erika, or people are like, I'm team Candace, and people are kind of in this position where like they feel like they have to pick a side, like you're either with Candace or you're with Erika. You can think they're both suspicious. Like you can distrust both. And honestly, I would put myself in that category. I think they're both suspicious. And I know there's gonna be people that are gonna be like, well, you're making money off of content off of them. Yeah, I'm making a couple bucks that I need because I didn't marry somebody who was already a millionaire. And the fact that both of these women are women who have platforms talking about the importance of women being home with their kids and choosing children over career, yet both of these women married multi-millionaires so that they don't even need to work. And you know, even though Erika's widowed, she was left with enough money so she never has to work again. Neither one of them have to work. They're both in situations where they've married money and they had their kids, but then they're out making content, doing interviews, they're out all the time. And where are their kids? Why aren't they home with their kids? And frankly, if anybody decides to come to me and is like, why are you making content? I didn't marry a wealthy guy, so I don't get to retire. I still got to try to make some money. Again, there's the hypocrisy there with that conversation, and then the idea that these are women that already have a ton of money. I think they're both doing it for attention and they're both raking in the money while they're doing it. I think they're both suspect. Does that mean that, you know, Candace is wrong about everything? No. Does that mean that Erika's wrong about everything? No. Does that mean that, you know, either one of them are all right or all wrong? No. I mean, I don't think you should put your 100% blind trust in anyone. I mean, that includes me because I'm not perfect. I'm human. I like to think I'm more authentic because I can tell you right now I'm not bought and paid for by anyone because I don't have that kind of money. I have people complaining that my mic doesn't sound properly. I'm like, I don't even have a microphone. I just have my camera because I don't have the money for this stuff. I would question people that are bought and paid for, especially people that already married millionaires and are still being bought and paid for. Question everybody, question everything. Use your discernment, use your intuition. Anybody who tells you otherwise, I would question them. One thing that Erika Kirk said in her interview was, she said, this is the first time that we have seen evil on display when we have social media at our fingertips. And she's referring to her husband's assassination. And I got to thinking, is this really the first time that we've seen evil on display since we've had social media? Like a lot of the shootings, like the school shootings and things like that don't necessarily happen. Like there aren't necessarily people filming it in the same way that there was like video footage of Charlie Kirk being shot. But there's evil that happens in a lot of ways in a lot of places now that social media is a thing. So I don't know, that statement from her felt very weird. Like, I mean, a lot of stuff that she says feels weird, but the idea that like her husband's assassination was the first time that we've seen evil on display in the time that we've had social media, it's like, is it? because, I mean, there's evil in the world that happens all the time, and social media has been around for a long time. Does she not think somebody shooting Trump in the ear and like attempting to shoot him, does she not think that that was, I mean, she's a Trump supporter. Does she not think that that was evil, and that was on video and that was on social media and stuff? I mean, granted, he wasn't killed, but I would think as a Trump supporter that she would consider that evil. I mean, I think even if you're not a Trump supporter, you would argue that attempting to assassinate, you know, a former president or a presidential candidate would be considered evil. That seemed very narrow-minded. It seemed very like, my problems are the only ones that matter, which doesn't seem very Christian to me, of this idea that like, oh, well, losing my husband, which has actually benefited her massively, let's be real, losing her husband. And I know there's gonna be people that are gonna be like, you know, there have been people that have said like, oh my God, losing your spouse and you know, is the most tragic thing. It's like, I gotta be honest with you, all the money that she's getting is probably soothing a lot of those tears. The tears that she just figured out how to have. When it comes to Erika Kirk's perspective on Tyler Robinson, I will give her a little bit of credit here. She did allude to it in the interview, the idea of like not wanting to lay everything out, like lay all the cards out before the trial. That's valid. That is absolutely valid, and I will give her that. You know, I don't give her a lot of credit for a lot of things, but I think that's valid. The way she said it with so much sort of like anger and disdain, as if she's like mad at the people questioning it. But again, she made a big deal about how she forgave that young man. She forgave that young man. She's forgiven him, and she's done all this stuff, but talking about like, it was boys like that young man that were the very people that Charlie was trying to save. Like all this empathy for him, but yet the people questioning it, she's got all this anger for. It's weird displaced anger, you know. It's like she made a big deal in another interview about how she's never angry with God and she's forgiven Tyler Robinson, but yet she's angry when people want to question the circumstances, when people want to question the court cases. She's saying that she's seen all the evidence, she's claiming she's seen the autopsy, she's seen everything, and she's sure. Well, okay, that's all well and good, but the rest of us haven't. And I mean, you know, hopefully we'll get more information when the trial happens, and hopefully he gets a fair trial, and you know. But the idea that she's so angry that people are questioning it, it's like, that's really massively displaced anger on her part. The anger towards people that are questioning how true this is, yet she's trying so hard to make it seem like she's forgiven this young man, it's a weird thing. It's like she's like angry at the wrong people. But then she also makes a big deal about, or she did make a big deal about forgiving this young man. But then she also said in the recent CBS interview that she doesn't say his name because he just doesn't deserve the breath out of her mouth. It's like, well, I thought you'd forgiven him. And I understand that you can, and she kind of referenced this in the interview, that you can forgive someone in sort of like a biblical sense, but you can also hope that justice happens. And you know, I mean, I think most people agree he should have a fair trial. You know, I don't know if it's just that she has not processed this properly. And I know people are like, you can't judge how she grieves, but like, if she has not processed this properly, then she probably should go and grieve and not be making these public interviews and be the face of the company and everything. She probably should just take some time off if she really is having this kind of conflict, and this really is an emotional conflict, or this is all a show and she's a bad actress. It's one or the other. And in either instance, like, she probably needs to take some time away and not be so public about all this stuff, because it's you know, if she really wants Turning Point to keep working because she wants the money from the company, she's not doing a very good job. Erika Kirk did say in one interview that I saw, I don't remember which one it was, that like she has no questions for Tyler Robinson or his family. She doesn't want to talk to him. She has no questions for him. She just believes that this was just evil that came over him, and she doesn't have any questions. And you know, I mean, there's plenty of things in life that you could argue are just evil. And I know that there's going to be people that are going to argue that I just don't understand because I'm just not Christian enough or something like that or whatever. But I don't know if I'm alone in this or if this is just how my brain works. But like, I always want to know why people do what they do. And sometimes you never get answers. And sometimes there aren't clear-cut answers. But it's just the way my brain works, is that I would always want to know why. And I mean, I'm not even in this situation. I wasn't even personally invested in Charlie Kirk or Turning Point or anything. But even I'm curious, just from a psychological perspective, like hearing from Tyler Robinson, hearing from his family, you know, if he was involved in this in some way, shape, or form, like, how did he get here? And that's one of the things that I just cannot deal with, the idea of, with anything, with any kind of mass shooting or any kind of violence or anything. It's like, I want to know, how did we get here? Like, how did this person get here? How did they get to this point? Because I don't believe that people are just like born evil. I mean, I suppose you could argue that some people might be, but I'm just of the belief that, you know, there's always triggers, there's always circumstances, there's always, I mean, I guess this is kind of what my platform is. I guess I just want to pick people's brains, and I just want to understand like how they got there. Not necessarily to make excuses for them, but you know, I can't fathom somebody, if someone is truly facing a tragedy where somebody has murdered somebody close to them, I just can't fathom them not having questions. And I understand maybe if they don't want to ask them, if they don't want to look this person in the face, if they don't want to talk to them, that's valid, I understand. But I can't fathom not wanting to know. There's a weird phenomenon, and I do think that there are more people who are questioning Erika Kirk, and there are people who are still blindly following her. But there are some people I've seen online that are still blindly following Erika Kirk, which I do think, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to trash anybody's religion, and I'm not trying to trash Christianity in any kind of way or anything like that, but I do think that there's sort of a certain group of Christians, a certain type of Christianity, and I'm not even that familiar with it to label it in any way, but there is a certain mentality among certain Christians in certain areas of Christianity where there's just, it's blindly following the people that are telling you what to do. It's blindly following your pastor. It's blindly following your church. It's blindly following the leaders that you've been told to follow. And you're never supposed to question anything, and you just have to trust everybody blindly. And I don't know, I just don't believe that that's healthy or safe. And that's not to knock anybody's religion. You can believe what you want to believe. But I just think that blindly following humans, I mean, because all the people I'm mentioning here, the church, are run by leaders who are human. You know, all these people are human, and the idea that people are taught to follow these people blindly. And I've seen people that are saying things like, if you're not connected to Jesus, or you're not connected to God, or you're not connected to the Holy Spirit in the way that Erika is, you just wouldn't understand. Which feels very, for one, very Mean Girls, and it also feels very cult-like. It's like, well, if you're just not like her, if you're not part of this religion, or you're not part of this club, or you're not connected to Jesus in the same way that she is, you just wouldn't get it. It's so snobby and so cult-like. It's just weird. But I think it's also like, it gets people blindly following her, because there's people who are like, ooh, well, I guess I have to follow her, because some people, they just want to be a part of something. They want to be a part of that group. So they're like, oh, well, I guess I have to blindly believe her because I want to be part of this group. I want to be in the in crowd, in the church or in the community or something like that. So it becomes a very like Mean Girl cult kind of a thing. And again, that's not a knock on anybody's religion, or you can have whatever religion you want. That's not for me to judge. It's the mentality around when people start pointing out inconsistencies in human behavior, and it's like, well, you're not connected to religion the way that she is, so you just wouldn't get it. That's where it starts to get kind of scary. Okay, in the CBS interview, when they started asking Erika Kirk about the conspiracy theories, and Erika got so obsessed with the Egyptian plane conspiracy, which is weird, because they even said when the interviewer was actually saying the conspiracy, she said the conspiracy was that Erika was being followed by Egyptian planes. So then Erika keeps trying to go back to the Egyptian plane thing, and you can tell, I feel like even the interviewer is trying to be like, well, you don't have to talk about that. Like, even she's trying to get her to stop because she's sticking her foot way in her mouth, and it's like she's just eating it for lunch. Erika comes up with all these reasons why she wouldn't have been on the plane, when it's like, to my knowledge, I haven't seen anybody say she's been on the plane. They were saying that the planes were tracking her. I don't even have a full understanding about what that even means. I haven't really delved deep into these conspiracies or anything like that, so I don't even really know what the significance of the Egyptian planes are. But I do know that the rumor was that Egyptian planes were following Erika. So Erika comes up with all these excuses that are supposed to be proof that she was never on an Egyptian plane, when it's like, well, nobody said she was. So it's a weird argument. It's like she's defending herself against things that aren't the thing that anybody's accusing her of. And then the fact that her argument as to why she wasn't on any of the Egyptian planes, which again, nobody accused her of, was that she was pregnant in that time period, and that they were places that she's never been to, and then corrects herself and says, well, I've been there, but not during that timeline. Which I'm like, well, doesn't that sound suspicious? Like, she's so definitive about they're places I've never been. Well, I've been, but like not in that timeline. It's like, well, okay, that sounds like you're backtracking. Which again, could be an innocent slip of the tongue, but it sounds suspicious. Then she actually admits in the interview that during her pregnancy, she hid, which is a weird thing to associate with pregnancy. I understand that for some people when they're pregnant, they don't feel great, they don't want to go out as much, maybe they need more time to rest, maybe they're not like out and about as much. I can understand some people have to rest more, some people have to be on bed rest. I mean, but calling it hiding seems weird. And then she's like, not because I was embarrassed, which I'm like, why would you be embarrassed? You were a married woman at that point in time, so why would you be embarrassed about being pregnant? I mean, it's possible because she's obviously so image conscious that she didn't like the fact that she gained weight. But the fact that she was able to hide, I mean, in this day and age, the fact that she was able to hide out being pregnant, I mean, first of all, that's an incredibly privileged thing to do. To hide while you're pregnant. That's like privilege on another level. But she said that she hid while she was pregnant because it was a sacred time for her. But mourning the loss of your husband isn't a sacred time, because she's certainly not hiding now. Like, she's certainly not hiding while she's in mourning and when she has allegedly 2 kids that we seem to never see, who may or may not exist, who are mourning. I mean, probably they're too young to fully understand what's going on, but they're 2 kids who are not seeing their father again. She doesn't think that's a sacred time. She thinks that's a time when it's time to be public and be in front of everybody. But when she's pregnant and growing a human, she had to hide that. Again, I can understand not being out and about as much. I can understand needing more time to rest. Like, I can understand all those things. But hiding? I mean, for one, that's a very privileged life to live, that you can hide while you're pregnant. But also, it's strange. She was a married woman. She didn't have to be embarrassed about it. Like, it's weird. But then her argument that all she wanted while she was pregnant was an In-N-Out burger and, you know, or a hot fudge sundae or a chocolate milkshake. So obviously she wasn't on Egyptian plains, because why would she go off on a plane when all she wanted was her In-N-Out burger? Which is the weirdest argument for why she wasn't on a plane. That nobody accused her of being on a plane. They said planes were following her, so maybe they were just following her to In-N-Out burger. I don't know. That would be a pretty boring, like, tracking thing, I would think. But the fact that she was so adamant that because she was eating In-N-Out burgers while she was pregnant in hiding, that was the reason why she wasn't on an Egyptian plane. And it's interesting how that's the conspiracy theory that isn't even really a conspiracy theory that she kept, like, attaching to. She didn't want to address any of the other conspiracy theories that, like, she was possibly, like, the one that she was a Mossad agent, that she was Charlie's handler, you know, that her marriage was fake or anything like that. She didn't want to talk about any of that, but she wanted to obsess over the idea of trying to prove to people that she wasn't on an Egyptian plane, that nobody accused her of being on, because she was pregnant in hiding, not because she was embarrassed that she was a married woman who was pregnant, but because she just wanted her In-N-Out burger. That is the weirdest argument. Like, I feel like that was almost like an SNL sketch. Like, it was almost like it wasn't real. Like, I was like, is that really her argument? And again, it might be because she's just really bad at this. And it might not be because there's some kind of hidden conspiracy. It might be that she is just an absolute terrible spokesperson and she's absolutely terrible being interviewed. But again, that's on Turning Point and whoever the donors are and whoever's making money off of this, to look at this situation and be like, Erika's really bad at this. We need somebody else to step in as a spokesperson for this company. Or they know that this is getting attention and they think that this is going to work long term, so they're going to keep going along with it because she's controversial in the same way that Candace is controversial and making a lot of money because she's controversial. Maybe this is what they're doing. They're just like, oh, let's let Erika make a fool out of herself because it'll call attention to the company, and, you know, maybe I'm feeding into that in the same way. I don't know. But it was the most twisted argument to defend yourself, that, like, well, I wasn't on a plane that nobody said she was on in the first place because I was hiding my pregnancy and eating In-N-Out burger. What? I'm just gonna throw this out there because I don't really know what the answer is, but I'm curious. Charlie Kirk was Christian. He wrote a book about the Sabbath. They even make it very clear in, like, the CBS interview, they refer to it as the Jewish Sabbath. Because I Googled it the first time that Erika mentioned that Charlie practiced the Sabbath and he would like turn off his phone and be like Shabbat Shalom. And I only associated that with the Jewish culture. I Googled it and it kind of, Google AI kind of says that some Christians do practice that. I don't know if by some Christians they mean just Charlie Kirk. I don't know. But Charlie Kirk as a Christian wrote this book talking about Jewish Sabbath and practicing that as a Christian. And now I have not read the book, I haven't gotten the book or whatever. Is that cultural appropriation? I'm curious. I'm just throwing it out there because it seems strange. Like, I could kind of understand if like Ben Shapiro wrote a book about the Sabbath and trying to encourage people to practice the Sabbath and talking about the history of it and reasons for it. But Charlie Kirk being such a devout Christian, it seems odd to me to write a book about a Jewish custom. And I understand if he's trying to convince Christians to practice it. Again, I am not a foreign policy expert or a theologian or anything like that, so I am not somebody who can sit here and tell you all of the intricate ins and outs of all the stuff about Israel or anything like that. I don't know much about it, and I really don't want people to explain it to me because I feel like it's way over my head. But I mean, even someone like me who's tried to stay out of that stuff completely because I just don't understand it, even I'm starting to be like, what's the deal with Israel? Like, it seems like everything seems to trace back to there, and at first I was like, okay, this is some conspiracy theory thing that I just don't understand, and there's too many conspiracy theories for me to keep up with. I'm just trying to deal with keeping up with some of the American ones, but, and I don't understand it. I don't know if I ever will. The whole thing seems odd to me. Like it's weird. And the idea that, you know, Erika mentioned something about having a lot of Jewish people that work for her, and people were talking about the fact that there were a lot of like Jewish donors to Turning Point. But if it's an organization that is supporting Christian conservatives, I mean, I understand if you happen to be a Jewish conservative and you also believe in many of the same things, why you would support the company. But like, to be a major donor of the company that supports a religion that isn't yours seems strange to me. I don't know. And again, I would not pretend that I understand all the intricacies of this. I just think the whole thing is weird. I think it's all very suspicious, and there's probably people out there that could break that down that have way more foreign policy and religious knowledge than I do, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I do think it's weird. Just looking at it from the outside, and just really, my analysis is much more on relationships in media and things like that, but it's weird. Like, it is. Even for somebody who tries to stay out of that stuff, you can't really ignore it because something suspicious is going on. In the CBS town hall interview, Erika Kirk kind of addressed the hypocrisy that I think a lot of people have been pointing out, or they asked her about the hypocrisy of the idea that she encourages women to prioritize motherhood and things like that, but yet she's not living that life. She's living the life of a CEO, of a girl boss, things like that. She gave kind of a standard answer about, you know, the idea that this isn't her choice, which it is. Let's be real. She's choosing to be CEO of this company. I understand that her husband not being the CEO of this company was not her choice necessarily. You know, if you believe that it was just Tyler Robinson that did this and she didn't have anything to do with it, if you believe that, then it was not her choice, that her husband was not still there. But it's her choice to step in. Like, she wasn't forced to do this. I mean, unless she was, but based on what we know and what she's sharing publicly, this is her choice to do this. She could have somebody else run the company. She could even have a voice behind the scenes, but she clearly doesn't want to be behind the scenes. She clearly wants the spotlight, which she's choosing to do, but don't act like you're a victim of this when you're choosing the spotlight. But she's making it sound like she didn't choose this, but that Turning Point and being CEO isn't a career. So she would prefer to be home with her babies, even though she's obviously never home with her babies, because when would she have time to be home with her babies? But she is doing this because it's an extension of her husband, and it's not really a career, it's her family, and it's this whole, I mean, it was such a roundabout excuse that was absolutely like, okay, no, you're still being a hypocrite, and you're saying that other people shouldn't be working, that other women should be home with their kids when they're little, but it's okay if you're not because you have an excuse. But it's not okay if other women are. When at the end of the day, it's like, okay, your excuse is the fact that you claim that you were left with no choice because your husband was murdered, when you do have a choice. You could let somebody else run the company. So you're claiming that, and also that this is an extension of your husband. Okay, well, what about the women that don't have the choice to stay home with their kids because they either don't have a husband and their husband didn't leave them with millions, or their husband simply doesn't make enough to financially support the family. But yet Erika gets to sit there and say, oh, well, it's acceptable that I'm working outside the home and not home with my kids for these reasons. She can pretend she'd rather be, but she's not because of these reasons, and those are her justifications, but other people's justifications aren't as important. That's what the implication is. I mean, but honestly, like I've said before, I think, you know, Candace is in the same situation. She acts like, you know, women shouldn't prioritize careers and they should be home with their kids. Meanwhile, she's got a career. And both of these women were married to multimillionaires, as I've said before. Erika was left with millions. Candace is married to someone with millions. These women don't have to work, and they're choosing to work, but then they're also choosing to make a platform of judging other women for having careers and not being home with their kids. Erika also made a comment about the idea that there's such a small window that women can have babies, although she had her babies in her 30s, so she could have had them in her 20s. So it's not as small a window. I mean, it's a pretty big part of a woman's life that she has as her childbearing years. But she's basically acting like it's such a small window of time that women have to have babies. And, you know, you can start your career, but then you can have your babies, and then you can have somebody else run your company. You know, you can manage it, but you can have somebody else run the company, and then once the kids are older, you can go back to work, and then you can go back to having a career once you've raised your kids and everything. And like, that's what she's telling women to do. Well, first of all, it's an incredibly privileged thing to be a woman that just starts a business and runs her own business. It's a lot of work. Running a business is a lot of work. And the idea that you think that you can just create a business, like, oh, just create a business when you're young, and then when you decide to have babies, you just have somebody else run the business while you focus on the babies. It's like, well, that only happens if you, first of all, are making enough money in your business so you can hire a team of people to help you, and then you can find a good team of people to help you. I mean, these are all things that take a lot of work and a lot of planning, which is a lot easier to do if you're in a privileged situation where you marry a guy with money, so you don't really have to worry about money, or you don't really have to worry about working, which the vast majority of women, unfortunately, are not going to be in that situation because the majority of men are not making enough money to financially support a family. And then she mentions the idea that a lot of businesses, you know, get started by women while they're pregnant or while they're mothers or things like that. It's like, yeah, that can happen, and like, more power to women that pull that off, but that's still a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that has to happen, and you're also expected to raise a child, and these things don't just happen. And the idea that it's like, just start a business, run a business, and then have your babies and let somebody else run the business, and you can take care of your babies, and then when they're older, then you can go back and you can, you know, I mean, she's acting as if this stuff is just so easy and it just happens for people, when it's like, that's not reality for most people. Like, that's not reality for the vast majority of people in the world. Having a business is a lot of work, even if you do hire people to work on it for you, which is a privilege to do. And then the idea that you're going to do that and you're going to be raising a child, and clearly Erika doesn't have that balance down, because she's literally, there's no way she could possibly be with her kids. Between the beauty maintenance that she has to keep up, the fundraisers that she's showing up to, and the interviews that she's doing, and the promos, there's no way she's home with her kids. And she can justify it all day that it's like, well, this is an extension of my husband, and this is my family, and she can justify that all she wants, but it's still taking time away from her babies that she has said women should be prioritizing. Again, her justification for how she can promote that motherhood is the most important thing, and that mothers should be prioritizing their families and being with their babies while she's not doing it, like, those justifications don't really hold water. I also thought it was interesting, there was a young woman who asked a question in the town hall meeting about being a Christian woman, but also being a career woman in New York City, and, you know, tips for how to find a Christian man, which I thought was, you know, a valid question if that's what you're looking for. And, you know, Erika went through this whole spiel about the idea that she didn't date while she was in New York City because she knew the dating scene and she knew how it was, and she just didn't date in New York City. In order to find a man like her Charlie, you know, she had to become the type of woman that would attract a Charlie, and the idea that if you want a good Christian man, then you have to be that type of woman. And that's valid. I fully agree with that, and I think that that works for men and women. If you want a certain type of person, then you have to find the parts of yourself that are going to be compatible with that type of person. Valid relationship advice, okay? I mean, whether we're talking about religious or we're talking about anything, like, you have to find the parts of yourself. If that's the type of partner you want, you have to find the parts of yourself that are going to be compatible with that person. My perspective and where I come from is I typically am like, you need to become the best version of yourself, and then you will attract the person that is a match for you, that is the best version of yourself. Because I think going the other way it can too easily get into you trying to pretend to be someone you're not to attract a certain type of person. I usually come with the belief that you should kind of become the best version of yourself, and then you'll naturally attract someone who's compatible with that person. The issue that I have with Erika's advice in that area is that the conversations around how her and Charlie got together, I mean, there's some similar threads, but the story seems to keep kind of changing a little bit, which I could understand if they were a couple that had been together for 20 years, but she doesn't remember how long they've been together because she couldn't even remember their wedding date in another interview that they did together, so there's that. But for two people who haven't been together that long, the fact that the stories of like how they got together and that they're not consistent, I mean, like there's a thread of similarity as if like they both have their story, so to speak, but they always seem to shift a little bit in conversation. Erika has said in some interviews, the CBS interview, of this idea that like you have to be the Christian woman and be the person that would be a match for Christian man, and let people know that you are ready for that life and that you're ready for settling down and having that man come into your life and everything. But Erika has said in other interviews, she's kind of made it sound like Charlie pulled her out of that New York City girl boss lifestyle, like that he rescued her from that or saved her from that or something like that, as if she was still in that world and like Charlie was what lured her out. So it's kind of contradictory, because on the one hand she's acting as if, well, you need to be ready to leave that world and that needs to be the mentality that you're in, but then she makes it sound like she wasn't in that mentality, but Charlie pulled her out of that into that mentality. I've also seen other interviews where Erika has explicitly said that she didn't even think about the idea of settling down and having this traditional lifestyle until she met Charlie, and that's what he wanted. So again, there's inconsistencies in the story, and again, whichever answer is right is the answer. I mean, I don't really care which one it is, but the fact that there's inconsistencies make it seem suspicious, and it starts to make you question what the reality was. And maybe if she can't actually give a direct answer and she is kind of all over the place as to what the answer is, maybe she isn't the person that should be giving people relationship advice, because, you know, it's like, okay, was she ready for that man to come into her life, and did she make that decision and decide that this was the time when her good Christian man was going to come in, or was she not even thinking that and then that man came along? I mean, it's not like either answer is right or wrong. It's just the fact that she's been inconsistent. It leads to suspicion. I mean, it does look suspicious, and that's where I'm like, okay, well, I mean, at the very least, we probably shouldn't be taking relationship advice from her, because her stories seem to be pretty suspicious. And again, I'm not necessarily negating the advice she gave in the CBS interview about, like, you know, you need to become the type of person that's going to be a match for the type of person you want. Valid advice. But again, it's interesting how her stories of connecting with Charlie seem to change depending on the environment and the story she wants to tell. And that's where, again, it's not like they were married 20 years ago and, you know, they kind of both have a different recollection of how it went. And again, like I have mentioned in other videos about the old interview that Erika did with Charlie, where like she couldn't remember their wedding date, she couldn't remember how many years they've been married, she couldn't remember, you know, she was like, well, I have to remember the kids' birth dates and this and that, when it's like, well, you have 2 kids, and is it that complicated to remember your dates and stuff? I don't know. It's giving very Chrissy Teigen, you know, when she was on Meghan Markle's show and she was like, yeah, I have my kids' birthdays tattooed on my arm so I don't forget them, and then she couldn't even read the tattoo, and she was like, well, is that a 6? I don't know. Like, it's just saying. I don't say any of this stuff to get you to vote one way, vote another way, believe in a certain religion or not believe in a certain religion, like whatever. I don't really care about any of that stuff. That's your choice. I just want people to use their discernment. I just want people to use their intuition. And, you know, one of the things that I've noticed so much in doing these videos about Erika Kirk is there's a lot of people that really wanted to believe that Erika was a genuine, honest person, and felt so guilty that they felt like she was off. Like they felt bad, or like it wasn't honoring Charlie's memory by questioning Erika. And I want to give people permission to question everything. You know, be skeptical. at the end of the day, it's the skeptics that got Trump elected in the first place, which for some people watching that might be a positive thing, some people might be a negative thing. It doesn't matter, but like, I don't care who you vote for. I question everything. Like, you should question things. That's valid. And anybody tells you that you shouldn't question things is probably trying to lie to you. So yeah, I just want to give you permission to question things. And, you know, are all the conspiracy theories true? Probably not. Are all of them false? Probably not. So like when somebody is trying to defend themselves against something that they're not really being accused of, or somebody is adding way too much detail to a story that has nothing to do with anything, that never ends up going anywhere, it's probably a deflection from the truth. And it's just one of those things where, you know, it could be all a matter of that Erika is just a really bad speaker and she's a bad spokesperson and her PR team is not doing a good job with her. Or it could be something a lot more sinister. I don't know the answer to that, but I just want everybody to know that it's valid to ask these questions. And, you know, these are all things that I think you should notice in your everyday life. You know, when you're dealing with people, there are people out there that are trying to deceive you. Are you dealing with someone who, you know, jumps to trying to defend themselves against something that you didn't accuse them of? Well, there's probably something suspicious going on. Or someone who's constantly trying to overshare certain details of things that don't really matter and don't have anything to do with the topic at hand. Could be a distraction for them. I mean, these are all very common things that happen in everyday life, and that's one of the reasons I talk about this, because for most people, I don't really think Erika Kirk is necessarily a personal part of their life, although if you are a Turning Point fan, then you might feel like she is. But yeah, some of these things are very suspicious. You know, I've already done a lot of videos about Erika Kirk, so I don't know how many more I'm gonna do, but you guys seem to like when I kind of break down some of her interviews and videos, so if you guys want me to keep doing these, just let me know. If you're like, I'm over this chick, I don't want to talk about her anymore, you can let me know that too. Because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Honestly, I know these topics, especially when it gets into religion and politics, can get very heated. I'm fine if you disagree with me. I just ask that you be respectful, but I would love to hear from you and your thoughts on any of the stuff I talked about in this video, or any other video suggestions or anything, so let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I do love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Honestly, any engagement on this channel really does help to boost it in the algorithm so more people can get this message. If you would like to check out my guided journals, which a lot of people have told me are very helpful, and this time of year they make great stocking stuffers, the Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal and the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal, they're both available on Amazon. Details are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. And just so you know, they are not religious based. Whatever religion you are, these are completely applicable to anybody. They're really more psychological than they are based in any specific religion. So available for everybody, and they're not anti-relationship, they're not anti-man. They're designed for women to really tap into the best version of yourself. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.